Good morning, Transformation Team and ATV. Welcome to this week's Transformation Talk with Wellington. Today we're chatting with special guests Maverick Dave, Martin Lapointe, and Dave Burns to talk about how they successfully work together on combined.
There we go.
Just a little technical difficulty. So we're talking with Maverick, Martin, and Dave about how they successfully work together on their combined priorities and initiatives in fraud and identity. But before we jump in, I'm going to pass it over to Wellington for an important update.
Yes, thank you very much, Nicolina. That is funny, by the way. And we just did that to make you two as nervous as possible. We've got Tia and Nicolina helping us out today while Calvin's on holiday. I believe he's on holiday. And I think he's in somewhere really awesome, like down south, Louisiana or something. Oh, lucky guy. And actually, Meredith is on holidays too. So thank you guys for filling in. But before I go too far, a couple of quick things. Transformation X, our big event, and we are really making it a big event this year, is on March 13th and 14th in Edmonton. Please complete the registration link sent by Chelsea White by the end of the day today. We need to know how many people are going to be in attendance. And if you want to be there, we want you to be there. But if you wait too long, we may not have room for you. So please make sure you get that done. More detailed details are going to be coming very, very quickly around the agenda and busing and hotels, but we need to get everybody to register first, so please get that in. A couple other just quick things, just want to bring to your attention, Taste of Agile training. We asked everybody to complete the Taste of Agile, the 2-hour training session within the next week or two. When is the actual deadline, Nicolina?
March 4th.
March 4th, yeah, so we've got, I guess, under 2 weeks now. And it's really important that we're all learning the same language to speak the same language. I think we're all working hard to be adopting Agile, but it's important we're doing it the same way. And there's an article in the ATV community today, ATV's gold medal at the Olympics. Certainly encourage you to read it because it certainly aligns well to the Agile story. Now, I was at the cult gathering this week, and for those of you not familiar, including just what everybody I've spoken to, it's like, why are you going to a cult session? It's like, and that instantly turns them off. But it's actually a session about brand, and it's a really interesting event because they're talking about how brands have evolved from a place where 10, 20 years ago, companies would market their brand by buying advertising and what have you. Now brands are much more complicated. Brands are around who you are and what is the authentic reason or raison d'etre that behind the organization. And when you look at the impact we're having on the brand, it's pretty substantial. We're trying to reposition ATV as Alberta's, this organization committed to Alberta, but that is going to be an innovation leader in our industry and quite frankly disrupt the very industry we're in. And that is who we are, and that is what we want our brand to be. So it was I thought it was a really interesting insight. I think we're on a great road here, and all the research the R&B team are suggesting Albertans are starting to really pay attention to that. And I guess that kind of leads well into this conversation here. If we're going to transform ATV, we have to be thinking very, very differently around the way we solve for problems. And I think, like most large organizations, we've traditionally solved for problems in, by the way, the speaker's still going. I can hear it. So I don't know if this is something we can actually disconnect or not, but I'm not sure if that will actually give any feedback, but that's fine. Where was I? Yes, we gotta look at how we solve for problems differently. And in the past, like most organizations, we would look at a problem and we would specifically look at how we would solve for it. So, X is broken, let's fix X. But I think in the future, if we're going to look at ways to make sure that we have the resources we need to solve for the problems of the future, we have to be thinking in a much more exponential or multiplicative way. That's a good word. So if you're thinking about Transformation X and the conference we're about to have, it's about that X factor. And this is a great example of an X factor. We've got Martin Lapointe, who is a leader in our CX team. We've got David Burns, a leader of our enterprise fraud team, but working in integrity. And then we've got Maverick Dave, who is a leader on our digital team. And the three of these individuals and their teams came together and did some pretty fascinating work in the last couple of months. Maybe I can leave it to you to tell the group what you've been working on.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've done a few different things together, actually. So we're all working together on a couple different squads. The first is sort of the identity evolution squad that's tasked and reimagining sort of how our customers access their financial lives and needs. And then we're all working together on the fraud squad and looking how we can make customer security our problem and not theirs. And so we've done some pretty interesting stuff as of late together. And so when Wellington was asking about sort of hearing about some of this, it didn't feel right to sort of give you 1/3 of the story as it kind of takes all three of us to kind of do anything. And so we recently put in an identity management platform that's going to really change kind of a little bit how our customers access all the various apps that we're putting out there. I think Maverick's probably the best person to talk a little bit about how we're going to do that.
Well, actually, like the way I only with ADP for 9 months.
Yeah.
So when I started, I asked like, okay, so we have working on physical security, and then my first question is, okay, great, we have security, which I have done this before. I know what to do. So the first question I said, can we just reuse the retail banking login flow? Just use it and then put over there. But that should be really good, right? And the answer I got is no, we cannot do it because everything just tightly coupled, right? SAP, when you make some changes, you have to, change all the way from the bottom to the top. Right? Okay, great. Okay, then I said, but the team told me, well, actually, you know what? We have done that for virtual assistant project. We create a new flow. Okay, great. So can we use the new flow? No, it's still tightly coupled. Then I just talked to myself. Okay, I try to get this right this time, right? So and then working with Martin upon, we try to find a. So this is where we try to handle the identity management for us, and then we did the enterprise analysis, make sure we can fulfill the security, the disaster recovery, and then the high availabilities, that kind of enterprise good stuff. And then Martin pretty concerned. Are we able to finish that at all? So because like the project we start sometime in I believe August, and then we target to finish that in November, and then I said no, I've done this already. And then eventually after we finish the analysis, and while we do the analysis at the same time, the vision is we try to create one login application like Google, then that can be used, right? So that login flow should be able to use for the channel, right? And then actually we get it done around November campaign, and then waiting for the government to.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So how much we budget for the
Yeah, we had put aside, I think it was notionally $300,000. I think the entire implementation of the platform, standing up security, of creating this reusable component was like less than half. Right? It was like 100.
Yeah.
And how much would it have cost to customize our original retail login to do this?
Well,
I would
actually,
suggest.
Well, it was possible.
It's a lot of money.
maybe
An endless bucket
maybe
of
the
dough.
cheapest maybe one.
Yeah.
So,
So that is transformative. Actually, it's a great transformation.
So you know what? Just right after we finish the security, we're working on the business banking web. We just use the same flow between 2 weeks to get it done.
Yeah.
For the login flow for business banking, and then right after, actually, just recently we finished the ADP IS Postgre app. We use the same flow, a week or 2 weeks, we get it done as well.
And that's really a fundamental shift in how we look at technology.
Yeah.
Right. And so it wasn't easy, for me. I come from a technology background in the company, so sort of letting go of the death grip and sort of deferring to Maverick certainly took a lot of work. But when you sort of step back and you now look at a foundational component we built, it's actually foundational, right? Like the next time we go to plug in login or plug an application into this framework, it's free or it's like exponentially cheaper, right? And so I've learned through that it's really important to sort of trust and expect the same from others and sort of let go. And and it just gives these guys the freedom to look sort of holistically across the enterprise of technology as opposed to sort of one project or silo, which may have been kind of how we used to do it. So we're seeing some of the benefits in that. And then while we're kind of reimagining and creating these sort of broader platform experiences, we have to make sure we're not just opening the door for people to kind of get in and rob us.
And that's where you come in, David.
Yeah, I mean, I think really from our standpoint, we're looking at it and saying, what is the simplest flow that we can make that's going to have the best customer experience where we're not ultimately going to get killed, right? We don't want to spend a bunch of time and effort and then be picking up the pieces later. So really we're in I guess I'd say we're probably a trusted advisor capacity in this particular one, where we're providing a bit of advice, we're providing a little bit of guidance, but ultimately we don't want to be the brakes in the car if there's no corner that we're coming up to, right? So it's understanding, is there a corner, is there something where, how much are we going to influence? In some cases we know we're going to have to yell stop, but we don't want to do that if there's no good reason to do so. And in this case, like, we're looking at it, this is a great win. Like, this is something that we have a foundational flow that's going to allow us to move on. And it's going to allow us to plug in a bunch of different technologies, which, Martin and I probably have lots of conversations, like, how do we get rid of passwords? How do we get rid of challenge questions? How are we going to move to that next exponential state? Because this is really, it's a foundational component, which is allowing that exponential capacity from a customer experience point of view.
And a lot easier to manage one login process than having disparate processes across the organization.
Yeah.
And I have to say, for a fraud manager, Dave has a very customer-centric view.
Yeah, I love that.
How we should approach this.
That is awesome. I agree. So any chat in the community right now?
No questions in the chat yet, but I have one. Martin, you mentioned trust and expect the same from others. So just from the team, you guys are 3 different teams trying to come in and work together and do things differently. So how do you apply the ATBs to make that successful, which clearly it was really successful?
I'd argue we're not necessarily 3 different teams, right? I think there's almost nothing we can kind of do in isolation, right? Like, I can come up with lots of good and bad ideas, but without someone to kind of filter out the bad ones and someone to actually build it, like, we're not really going to go anywhere. And so I think the ATVs are a nice set of guideposts on how we all need to work together. But I mean, we just go nowhere if we don't. So I don't think there's an alternative. I think it's sort of just the only path.
Yeah, I basically from the number point of view, from the money point of view, I believe, like, before we have budget for projects. Right now, we try to pool all the resources, all the funding together to build a system for a cluster for ADB. That's a major difference than before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's that's a good point to touch on. I mean, it doesn't happen by flipping a switch, right? Like, it takes work every day. We were sitting down yesterday, even just talking about how we can kind of realign some of the work in fraud so that it's sort of as successful as some of the identity stuff. And I think one of the big changes we've made is that we jointly roadmap. Like, we don't go and pitch something and like huck it over the fence to you. It's we sit down and determine kind of where what we want to do fits into the overall architecture and sort of sequence it in without like a bunch of dates up front. And so it's something that we have to work at kind of every day.
Yeah, it's really about transparency and openness. And from a fraud perspective, we want to be open. Like, what do our fraud numbers look like? Do we have a problem? Do we not have a problem? What is our strategy? Like, how does that tie? Like, what are our ideas that we want to do? Like, keeping in mind that it's agile and that'll change, but like, where do we see this going from our perspective? And that way we can be very collaborative in terms of our planning and our vision, and come up with a singular vision rather than say Martin having a vision and I having a vision and Maverick having a vision and everybody having their own individual visions. By being open, we break down those barriers, right? And it becomes that one team environment.
Yeah, and there's a lot of information on those viewpoints. We've made some headway on some smaller things just because Dave has access to a lot of data that I don't see, and then we and our partners in the CCC see different things that are causing customers problems. So we've actually had some smaller quick wins on the login experience, getting rid of things like that silly 90-day activity.
Yeah, good job.
Locking 3,000 people a month. And that's really cool. And some of the stuff you've done around just not challenging people when they don't need to be challenged.
Yeah, I mean, working with Martin, and it was a collaborative thing as we started looking at like, did our rules make sense? So we made a lot of changes to it. We cut down our login challenge rate by 60%, our overall challenge rate by 53%. Like, we realized there was all these places where customers were having these extra friction points that were adding absolutely zero value to the business. So it doesn't always have to be a big project. Sometimes you can have a big win just on, back of, a small realization. And a lot of times those realizations come from working together. So,
totally. And so instead of saying, hey, this is mine, like login is mine, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna get the credit, and Wellington's you get all these different viewpoints, right? And so now the net result is that much better.
But this is the way we need to be working in transformation, right? Like at the end of the day, we've created, the pillars, CX and data and digital and integrity, all of them, around the notion that we need to build up our expertise. But it was never about the idea that we'd all be working in isolation, right? But that's so easy to do.
Yeah.
So you guys are a great example.
Well, in this conversation, as you work through a taste of Agile, lots of what you guys are talking about and the ATB Agile principles are really coming through in your conversation. And so how has your work shifted from waterfall to Agile? Because it sounds like you guys are doing Agile the ATB way. So
yeah, let's hear it.
well, all of you.
With hard work. I mean, that's honestly it. It's like that kind of behavior change. I mean, like a lot of just our process and behaviors and mindsets are aligned to the way that we were doing things, right? Like very much in sort of that waterfall production line method, and that may have made sense previously, but with our sort of changing conditions in our market, we have to just be different and more responsive and distribute that decision making. But it just takes work every day. Like it takes some sitting down and just sort of every time the car goes onto the ditch, picking it up and putting it back on the track. And just trusting and going into everything with an open mind and a collective view on where we need to go, right? I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I think for me, like one of the big differences between waterfall and Agile is waterfall, you have a big project and it takes a long time, and it's hard to have the same degree of intensity around waterfall if you're like, oh, well, it's a year. So if I'm 2 weeks behind on my year project, like, do I care? But like, if you have, shorter sprints and you're moving faster and you break things into smaller chunks, it picks up the pace, right? So, I would say, working with Maverick and the digital team and Martin, like the pace is fast, the iteration, the turnaround time is fast. If we run into something, we're like, hey, this isn't working. And the fraud squad example that you gave was a good one where, we've realized and we identified that maybe there was just probably not working quite as ideally as we wanted it to be. So we said, we can turn on a dime and we can move very quickly. So for me, it's about Agile brings that intensity, which sometimes I think that is really an important thing in that kind of quicker decision making framework.
Yeah, and then just committing. Like I think that's the main thing, just leaning into it, right? Like it's it's gonna have its challenges. There's always gonna be that natural tendency to sort of fall back on what we're comfortable with, and so just being committed and doing it. I personally connect very strong with this. Coming from IT, it sometimes felt like being at the bottom of the waterfall, and so I'm very motivated to kind of make this change. And I see other people see some of the same things.
Yeah,
So
I believe like this is like again user security for a good example, right? So we just did it for something small to me, then customer can just use it as soon as possible. And then the system we build, Martin myself, we're talking about multi-threaded application, about the biometric. But we try to become the next spring, we try to put it on top one piece by piece, that people can see it. Then naturally, the good thing is the architecture we try to build right now is across the whole platform, unlocking for everybody. When we put the biometrics, everybody scan at the same time. So this is the beauty of this. Instead of all go to project and project again.
And what we really learned, like Agile doesn't mean no rules, right? Like I think we found that like just having that nice sort of like touch of planning and governance and sort of jointly road mapping things and kind of sets the group free to move quickly. And so I think that's something we really learned.
Yeah. So you bring up a great point about road mapping, because I think there's a myth out there that Agile means that we're not planning or we're not road mapping anymore. And you've brought it up a couple of times. And we have a comment from Tomas, with all the great work done by Identity and Fraud this past year, what's in the pipeline? So what is on that roadmap to continue to help Albertans achieve their dreams?
Oh, lots of stuff. Yeah, we have a lot. So we're looking at some different kind of biometric solutions. That's sort of the first thing that we're kind of after. One of the things that's becoming really important in sort of these new distributed platform business models is sort of continuous identity validation and something that's sort of not right in the face of a customer. So when we're talking about biometrics, we're talking about behaviors and how people hold the phone type, that kind of thing, not just sort of taking pictures themselves with the phone. And so we have some of that stuff coming, replacements for things like enhanced security that are still sticking our customers up. A lot of smaller stuff around challenge questions, some really exciting stuff in frauds.
Yeah, I mean, I think identity and fraud have such a close tie because of the data that you're collecting from an identity perspective. You can really do a lot of interesting things from a fraud perspective, actually, again, cutting down friction. So, you know, just expanding on Martin's point on, say, the biometrics. Like, if someone is left-handed and they always use their phone left-handed and it suddenly switches to being right-handed, you can use that from a fraud perspective. You can also use that from authentication perspective and be like, all right, Wellington always types at 30 words a minute, and he holds his phone right-handed at this angle, and I'm not going to challenge him because I see that he's like, I'm using all the passive biometric type things. It's not as simple as just taking a thumbprint, but I can now all of a sudden I can reduce the friction in that experience because of that data and that identity aspect of it. So
yeah,
I think that's probably one of the key ones for sure.
And then I think Maverick touched on secure key. I think secure key was like a nice little thing that our customers got. I think we were probably overdue, to be honest, but we were like the 13th bank, right? So it's like it's not like transformation, but that kind of model kind of is, right? Like that sort of distributed trust model where like we may not always be holding the identity of the people interacting with us, right? And so participating in sort of these distributed trust model where, you know, we're co-creating customer value with different companies is important too. So we're looking at a couple other examples of that. They have another sort of blockchain-based network that involves telcos and retailers. That same kind of model where trust is sort of offloaded, and who knows, maybe there's a little revenue stream for a bank to kind of
be the authenticator.
An authenticator, right? Yeah.
That's cool.
Actually, we have $300 a year for secure keys. So.
Revenue generation.
I expect to see my own P&L at the end of the year.
300 card. That's awesome.
Well, and it couldn't have come at a better time. T4s are now available in my path. If you guys missed that announcement,
you were really good at it. You guys are raising the bar for Meredith and Calvin here. It's good.
But yeah, if you haven't connected your ATB account with canada.tc.ca, go and do that, because it's one log. It again, it's removing that friction. How often are you trying to log in to file your taxes once a year? And it's like, what is my password?
Yeah.
This makes it so much easier.
But you know what? Our roadmaps are actually published, so you can just go and look as well. If people want a link, we can just flip you the link. Like there's not much to hide. So
yeah, no, totally. I'd say the one thing to think about is, you know, what we're trying to do is not say for the next 2 years, here's exactly what we're going to be building and exactly, you know, because I think that you can't look that far ahead. So the roadmaps are much more directional now. Like we know we need to transform how we authenticate customers, because if we don't, we're going to look like a dinosaur financial institution. Now, what those solutions are, you guys are figuring out as we go, but we have some ideas and directionally where we want to get to, but we're getting better all the time. And I think we're accelerating because we're empowering more and more team members to make those decisions as we go. And that's the kind of the point I just wanted to make here is, you know, I think in traditional IT organizations, there's very much a command and control kind of environment where, you know, the leader says we're going to build X, and so the teams start building X, and sometimes we stop asking why are we building X. We're trying to create an environment where we've got teams and squads that you guys are leading that are saying, what is the customer experience we're trying to create, and what are the best ways to do that, and empowering you guys to make those decisions as we go. And I know we're not perfect on that yet, but that is something that is really, really important. The best ideas in the organization are with our team members. They're not always with us as leaders or what have you. So awesome. Any other chat or feedback?
A bit of a connection to your cult gathering and the ATB Listens brand. So Josh says this is a great example of how team members listen to each other and move away from traditional narrow waterfall priorities. Awesome collaboration. And with ATB Listens as ATB's brand, how did you guys connect with that and use that as multiple teams coming together? Did you have any hiccups where you kind of had to take a step back and say, you know, I actually wasn't listening?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Someone else
Yeah.
go first. Yeah.
I guess what I would start with is I would say one of the biggest drivers on this is from listening, right? Like it's listening posts, it's complaints. Like this is probably one of the big kickoffs and drives that actually just started the ball rolling and keeps this a priority for us. Is this is what our customers are telling us, and so I think that's probably the first thing. As far as team members, I mean, it's not all. I'm sure we've had a few disagreements along the way, but I think probably, and often that probably comes from not listening. But I think the respect and the relationships that you build allow you to kind of react and handle those types of situations, that you continue to go forward and you adjust and you do eventually listen. But it is definitely it's not 100% perfect. And I don't know. I don't think, Martin, you've yelled at me too many times.
Have you yelled at the
Mavericks?
Yeah, I don't know. I look forward to more disagreements. How we solve things. Like I think I don't know with these guys. I think we found common ground pretty quickly. I mean, I think in the identity and fraud space, there were just some of these like big hairy problems. Like when you're locking like 250,000 people out of their bank accounts every year, I don't think anyone's disagreeing that that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
So it's like how to solve it is kind of where we sort of go around circles. But I mean, respect, right? I think is the main.
What was your view, Maverick, when you shared a little bit of insight here? So you joined us 9 months ago, coming from another institution that we're trying to kick their butt now, but they were recognized as having a pretty good online experience or digital experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you see as some of the big gaps we've got to close to and now take on to surpass other organizations like the Tangerines of the world?
Well, I believe definitely we starting with a smaller team, right? Like Martin, myself, Maverick Dave, we work closer together. We are working with Brian and Sean on their virtual assistants, business banking web. I believe like when we start working together, the people can see the value. They can see, the new way doing things, right? I believe we need to kind of keep propagating, to bigger group of people. I think that is something we're working on, right? So once we work together, I think we build the trust. And then that will be much more easier to going on, right? So this is the most interesting challenging right now, because compared to my previous experience, it seems like the whole company is just walking to the same direction. That's much more easier to get things done. But right now we still kind of, try to, communicate to people. They show this is the right thing to do. This is the easiest way to do things, and then there's a cheaper way to do things together. So I think we still need some time to have more people in buy-in.
I think that totally makes sense. And I think there's lots of great themes that we've talked about today. If there's one in particular that I'm hoping we'll all take away and this is, in my view, the beautiful story of what you guys have built together and what your teams are building together, is that it's the X. And we ultimately have been able to tackle multiple challenges. When we approached the problem initially of how do we create a better login experience for customers, we didn't stop at fixing one point solution or what have you. We looked at it around a holistic way of creating multiple wins for our customers, and we've succeeded. And I think we're now in a position that we build a new app. We've got a framework that makes it easy for you to build out a safe, secure login experience that is going to be a good experience. Where as opposed to we fixed a problem before, but now we've got to solve new ones tomorrow. So this is a great story, guys. Any last comments from the crowd?
We have a minute left, Wellington, so if you want to take the last word or pass it
what
along.
do you guys? What would be the last word you want to leave with the transformation team and some of our guests who joined us?
Oh man, you first. Yeah, you first.
I guess what I would say is we did a bit of a team building where everybody drew up, basically we had a picture and everybody colored a bit of a picture. And to me, it was a really good example of what you can accomplish when you have people working together. Like one person can create just a tiny little canvas, but as a team, you can create something so much bigger and broader. So to me, that was probably a great example. And this is, again, would be an example of that.
Yeah. And just to add to that, it takes work, right? Like it's, none of our squads started as sort of agile squads. I mean, you work every day to kind of make that happen. And when it sort of falls off the rails, putting it back on.
Right on.
Yeah,
Final thoughts?
to me, this is kind of a very interesting journey, right? So I keep saying the same thing over and over again. This is very rare opportunities for everybody to be part of this journey together.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah. So guys, we're going to close right away, but just remember to register for the Transformation X event happening on March 13th and 14th. Have a great weekend, everyone.